Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to have a very, very special guest today, Jimmy Newson. Hello, Jimmy.
Hey, how you doing, Marche?
Pretty okay, thank you. Uh, Today, we would like to talk a little bit about the business, about the processes, about the cultural differences between USA and Europe. But first of all, let me introduce you because I'm prepared.
Okay.
So, Jimmy Newson, consultant, keynote speaker, entrepreneur, event host, founder of Moving Forward Small Businesses, marketing expert, ESG advocate, boards advisor. Have I missed something?
No, I think you got. I have way too many, but I enjoy doing all of it.
Okay, so if you could bring some your professional journey, career, and how actually you became and how you fit all of these things in the being one person. So how it is possible, and what was your professional journey?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I'm old, so that's how I got all of that into the guy that you're now listening to or watching on your screen. But my background actually, I started off as an entrepreneurial nerd in school. Went into entertainment. So taught myself to sing, play instruments, do things. So I spent about 10 years or 15 years in the music industry. Did a lot of work with the Grammys, and that was my first opportunities to see the world. So I got to travel a lot and understand that the world was a lot bigger than I realized it was. And then there was a pivotal moment where I left the music industry and I was looking for something to do that I had a lot of control over it, and that was video. At the time, I started doing music videos, so I transitioned to video production for businesses because they had budgets, so they could actually pay you for all of your work. And as I started doing video production, as I did a lot of work for some bigger organizations here in the United States. And then I started working with small businesses through certain programs. And as I started to build my repertoire of businesses, I realized that a lot of the businesses we were doing video for didn't know how to leverage the videos. So I had to start to understand more about their business, which then led me to the point where I ended up starting to go more into business consulting and advising. And as I went into business consulting and advising, then I ended up creating Moving Forward Small Business, which is really about helping small businesses with growth strategies, leveraging innovation, technology, and business strategy. And through all that time, I still was performing. So even today, I'm performing. When I'm on stage speaking, I'm performing. When I'm doing webinars, I'm performing. So I'm actually an introvert. I'm actually extremely shy, but you can never tell when I do what I do, and that's just because of the passion of why I exist now. And everything I do is strategically structured. I mean, if I walk down the street, it's based on strategy.
Okay, yeah, but I met you for the first time at the Digital Marketing World Forum in Amsterdam last year, and I was really impressed by the energy that you bring to the stage. That was when I seen you for the first time. That was really something impressive. So you really do amazing job. But you mentioned that you support small businesses and small and medium businesses, let's say. And I would like to just, because I have friends across the world, and sometimes we discuss about the businesses and the scale. And the small business or medium business in Poland is way different than small and medium business in India or Africa or in USA. So in Poland, how we describe it, a small business is everything up to 25 employees. And medium business is something between 25 and 250, and everything above 250 is big business for us, big company. Yeah, of course, it's also related to the revenue, but in general, we have something, and probably you have it as well, the central statistical office, the responsible for counting GDPs, all these things, and this is how they how they divide it here in Poland. So what is small and medium business in USA?
Yeah, it varies differently, but what we've done is we've adopted the SBA's definition of a small business. The SBA is the Small Business Administration, which is under part of our government. And they say on average, a small business is up to 1,500 employees and up to $36 million in revenue.
Okay.
So until I adopted that, I would not have thought that. But we had to define that for our mission, for what we're doing here in not only in the United States, but around the world. So it's, and I guess because it's just such a vast land and there's so much more here, which again, we'll get more into that later. But yeah, so it's pretty big, and it'll vary slightly by the industry, but those are kind of the standards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe, I believe it's, it's from the statistical point of view, maybe they measure like it in Poland, but of course, from our point of view, the big business, let's say, starts from 700, 800, 1,000 people in the company. Then we count them as a big, but of course, from the governmental point of view, that they count the things differently. But do you have any specified industry that you work with? What are your typical customers?
Yeah, we don't necessarily, we really, we have in our ecosystem caterers to dog walking companies, a lot of service-based businesses, and then you've got e-commerce. So you got product-based businesses, but you also, hardware stores. So we really don't have any specific vertical we work in. But there are, of course, industries that don't really make sense to do what we do, and that could be like, grocery stores, any organization like that. But the majority of businesses can take advantage of growth strategies and things that we provide for small businesses.
Mm-hmm. I found one really interesting quote from your website. My purpose is to help you see the bigger picture and then attain that picture by developing a business growth mindset through embracing technology. So here comes the questions. What are the main barriers for the smaller business to grow, to develop themselves?
Sure. The two biggest things for us is usually finance and business structure. And I always say you don't have a finance problem, you don't have a human resource problem, you don't have a marketing problem, you have a strategy problem. And when you look at the strategy, when you develop a strategy, just like you develop a business plan, you need to develop a business strategy. And the business strategy, once it's done properly, will tell you where you're at, where you were, where you're trying to go, and what are the things, what are the tools, what are the resources that you need and to make that happen. And I think one of the biggest issues that businesses have is lack of focus, really, to understand where you're actually trying to go and what it's going to take to actually get there. When you lay out a business strategy, it actually becomes a lot easier. It's really about decision making the right decision, not being putting on the blinders and not being distracted by things that look like opportunities, but take you away from the big picture. So we have to develop that big picture, and then we have to protect that big picture with every ounce of our being. Anything that comes in and tries to distract you, it's a hard no. And sometimes that's hard for people to do. It's hard for people to say. They're like, yeah, but it's a great opportunity. Yes, it can be. But the question always becomes, is it going to help me get to that big vision, or is it going to delay me from getting to that big vision?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. And an interesting fact is that probably we share the same problem because, we have a similar, different profile. We are more technology oriented, but we also advise companies with strategies, sales, and things like that. And I think we share this problem because many companies, they say that, yes, sure, we have a strategy, but it is in a CEO head, yeah? And the strategy in CEO head sounds like we want to sell more, yeah. And I always say it's not a strategy, yeah. It's not a strategy to sell more, yeah.
Yeah, I get that all the time. You know, and I recently helped a company do a 38% increase in revenue, which totaled out to about 6.7 million in additional revenue. And when I first met them, I worked with them for about 6 months. And the guy, I said, you know, what's the main goal? And he's like, to make more sales. And I just had to pause for a second. And then, all right, so
Same again.
you know, you have to go into education mode. And I think that for as a consultant, that's probably our best opportunity to put them on the right track, because it's not going to work moving forward if they don't understand how you need to help them, because strategy is not a quick fix. It's a long-term thing. And so I said, what products do we want to sell? What can we sell in the middle of a snow? What ice can we sell in the middle of a snowstorm? You know, who's our lowest hanging fruit? What did we do last year? Is there any historical data? And they're just like, huh? What? I'm just like, these are the things that you have available to you that you don't realize you have available to you. And that's where I think they also underestimate what they actually have and the value of what they have. And that's our job, is to figure out that value and go, here's where you actually stand, and here's what we can do because of it.
Yeah, I think, you know, strategy gives a great value to the companies, but the common problem here, at least in the European market, is that small business doesn't understand the value. So the education is a very factor of this, what we are actually doing. So do you have some, I know that you have some activities during the events, but do you have some more, you know, edu activities to educate the market and let them understand the value of being having processes and being strategized, having strategy to develop the business? Because I believe, I understand that there is a lot of small businesses that they don't have big ambitions to grow, but most of them have, yeah? But to do this, they need to have a proper strategy and understand where is the value of strategy. So how do you handle it?
Yeah, and that becomes the strategy is not the sexy language in the group of things we can talk about. We can talk about AI, and we can talk about even CRMs. And they're like, ooh, what's that? You know, when you talk about strategy, you're like, So so we've had to become very clever with how we present it. And usually for us, it's really how much can we find out about the client or the potential client before our conversation. And then when we integrate, and it's almost like hearing a story. If you can relate to the story, you're more interested in the story, right? So if we can integrate them into the conversation around strategy, now they're like, oh, I didn't realize that I could do that, or that we've done that. And they'll say something to me, and I'll be like, wait a minute, what is that? And they'll explain it. I go, do you know from that point in time, you can do this, this, or this? And they're like, oh, I never really thought about that. I go, you wouldn't be able to think like that if you're not thinking strategically. And they're like, oh. And I go, and then of course, the big thing is, again, how do I tie it back to revenue, which is what the most important thing they care about. And so we have to make sure we go, because of this, then this could happen. And then, you know, if we look at leading indicators, leading KPIs versus lagging KPIs, the lagging being the finances, the leading being the activity that's going to get you the finances, we're like, this, and this can happen. And they're like, wow, this is exciting. They get excited and they're like, okay, we need to implement these things. And I go, whoa. Cascade, which is a tool we use all the time, says 9 out of 10 businesses that actually have a strategy fail at executing that strategy. And the reason why they fail is because of lack of alignment, meaning that you can have all these things you want to do, but if there's no alignment with someone to actually do the work, it's not going to happen. And that's why they fail. So you're overly ambitious about what's available based on your available resources. So we have to go, we can do all this, but now we need to stretch it out over time. We need to determine what is the most important things that could lead to more revenue. We do that first. And then as we do that, we either reinvest to build out our team, whether that's internally or externally. And then from there, we can start to add more things because we can handle more. And I go, so it's one thing is to come up with a strategy, just like you said, it's in the CEOs that you got to get it out of the head of whoever has it. It has to be fully available to everybody so everybody can see how their work contributes to the overall growth of the organization.
Yeah, exactly. And to have a, easy tool to share the goals. Once we share the goals, then it's easier to execute the strategy. Yeah, but I totally agree with you that it's. We recorded recently the podcast about one-to-one discussion and the meaning of one-to-one discussions with managers with salespeople. How important it is to do this every Monday or every month, every week. It doesn't matter how important it is. And my first thought was, I know that this kind of activities are not sexy anymore, because we all want to talk about AI, about CRMs, marketing automations, but without some foundations and building, the most important bricks in the company, and having this that you can overlay and build the additional layers, it's impossible to thrive. And it's the same with a strategy. If you don't have a strategy, but I totally agree with you that it's not so easy to influence the people and to teach them why it is important. That the first bricks in your company should be the strongest one. Then we can discuss about AI, all these things. But we know that the buzzwords are really sexy today, like AI and all these things, and just people just got crazy about it. And beside of this, of course, I totally agreed, but we can implement those advanced things once we have the basics. But people
absolutely
really forget about the basics. Okay, so from this processes point of view, do you see? Could you point any other things rather beside of strategies that are some kind of difficult barriers to overcome for small businesses to grow?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, I think you mentioned it, processes, so process optimization, technology integration, really, being customer centric, customer first, really, especially in a world now where 70% of all research on a brand or a company or a product is done before they even talk to you. So taking advantage of your current base, understanding why they've made certain decisions to get to work with you, and being able to integrate that back in to your marketing message, into the conversations your salespeople are having with new prospects. It's really understanding you have to be more of a holistic owner, a holistic business from the standpoint of visibility. If we jump into AI for a second, I've been doing a lot of conversations, a lot of talks around AI and search. And it's relevant because I'm having this conversation with quite a few clients, even over the last 7 days, where I'm explaining to them the old aspect of search engine optimization was really based around your website. Okay. AI is about everywhere optimization, so you have to be on social media. You have to be doing things off the site like press releases and having people mention your business and your brand. In addition to still making sure your website is fully optimized, because AI is not looking at just your website. It's looking at any aspect it can find on you to determine, are you a good source for whatever this query is on that somebody's doing on these AI search platforms like Perplexity, Gemini, ChatGPT search, and these things. And it even though I'm talking specifically about search in AI, it actually paints a bigger picture of how we need to look at everything holistically and go, are we in the right places, and is the sentiment around our brand as strong as it can be. So this is a new era for us, and now we have to now make another pivot. I'll be talking about this quite a bit. The next, hopefully, if I see you again in Amsterdam, to go, it's changing again. And here's what we have to look at. We have to look at understanding how are we positioning ourselves as a business, because that's going to be a challenge. Some are going to do it great. Some are already doing it. And some are going to have to do some major catch up. So unfortunately, there is no easy answer to this. Businesses struggle with all kinds of things. And we listed quite a few, but it still always goes back to strategy, because strategy will say, what battles can I fight now? What are my available resources, and what can I control at this moment?
Yeah, that's, it's a really interesting. You mentioned that this change happened almost over the night. If we could consider, positioning Google, comparing it to AI tools, it's a really rapid change, and it's not so easy to adopt it for many companies, especially those companies that are not tech-based and tech-savvy, let's say. So it might be a problem. So we discuss about the background processes, strategies, and things like that. So the next layer on it is usually technology, and you started with AI things, and the customers are asking very often. We have the same. We know that some of them technologies are buzzwords. It will be maybe a little bit like with the .com era, but so every company is AI today, every new product. But what is the adoption level in USA for the smaller businesses? The real, I'm asking about the real cases, not just using ChatGPT and that's all. Yeah. So the real adoption. How do you see it?
It's again, the U.S. market is vast. So you've got people all over the place. One moment you think everybody's is starting to adopt technology, and the next minute you realize they're not, and I run across this a lot, within our community that I run, and then being able to speak with people. I think overall, a lot of people are still quite behind. You have that very few that get it, and they're jumping on all kinds of technology, from chatbots to predictive analytics to tools that help with content creation. And build outs of whole marketing strategies. But the majority of them, I spend more time really just educating them. And so I'll use tools on our conversation calls, but those tools also become training. And they're like, I didn't really know I could do that. I once had a current client tell me that someone told him not to use AI tools like ChatGPT because it was plagiarism. and I was like, no, it doesn't. It's not plagiarism. You're not. First of all, you're not supposed to plagiarize anything. I go, but it can be used more than. And what the person was referring to is about creating blogs from other blogs. So I get what they were thinking, but I'm like, it's way beyond that. So I think there's a disconnect in regarding to what these tools can actually do for them. And by the time I was done with him, he can't go a day without leveraging any type of AI-based technology. I go, because it can be, the value always comes back to, well, why do I need it? And it's dictated again by my strategy. And I'm going, you have all this internal data. You can analyze that and make your life easier when it comes to personalized outreach for every single person you're trying to reach out to. I've once taken an entire document, a 150-page document, and pulled it into one of my tools and optimized and asked it to match it back to my company so I can make a pitch to the organization. So it had nothing to do with anything outside of the universe. It was specifically in relationship to that document and my organization. And it did a better job than I would have done to really find the connections between the two, map it out. And when I had the conversation with them, they were just floored on how well I really nailed who they were and how we could work together. And it was literally 87 seconds of time. with just to create the prompt.
Yeah, it's strange because sometimes I totally agree. You have a vast market, a huge market in the US, but Poland is smaller, way smaller economy. But I think we face the same problem that some of the companies are small, like 50 people, but they are really well organized. They have CRM. Maybe they are not very advanced, but they already know what they do. Yeah, and they are, let's say, on the proper path. But on the other hand, we meet the companies like 300 people, 70 people in sales team, and they work with a regular calendar and pencil. Yeah, so it's mind blowing. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I'm like, what?
Yeah, especially with this, more old school industries, because if we see a software companies, they are usually more mature in using technology, so it's way easier. But especially that implementing the typical CRM, SaaS CRM, it's not the rocket science, at least on the base level. Yeah, let's say, because if you want to go with more advanced things, of course you need some consultant to understand it. And we used to say that you can't do this over the night. You have to grow with the technology. You have to understand this technology, and we can put another layer and build this and teach this customer how to be more efficient, how to be more customer oriented with the technology, how to do some automations and things like that. But it can't happen over the night. So what is the tech stack, a typical tech stack for the small businesses in USA? Let's say there's more aware, yeah, like they already know what they do, but what is the typical tech stack? Is the marketing automation already standard or not?
It is. It all depends. A typical tech stack for us needs to be a CRM, an email service platform, the basics such as Google Analytics and Google Search Console. Those are two must-have tools, and I still am surprised I'm running across businesses that don't have that, because they're both free tools, which gives us access to their historical data. And then from there, we'll think about, where is their level of comfort? What tools can we integrate? My biggest thing is when I am talking to companies, especially the bigger ones, their biggest fear is now they have to get everybody to buy in on a new tool. So I go, well, first of all, let's take inventory of all the tools you have available. That's usually one of my first things. I want you to tell me every tool that you have access to, and I want you to give me access to it, because I know what I'm looking for. If you've got me on staff, you've got me on staff. So now let me take a look at the tools, because I don't want to have to recommend other tools to you if you have a tool that can do the job. One of my biggest request is that the tool is to some degree open source. It has the ability to talk to other tools. And if it doesn't have the ability to talk to other tools, that's where I see the biggest problem. Because eventually I think you're going to outgrow that tool. And the problem is you have all your data in that tool, and now it needs to be moved, which is a major pain in the butt. So besides the CRM, besides an email marketing platform, then and Google Analytics, Google Search Console, of course, there's probably other things I'm missing, but then we'll decide, well, what other tools do we need? Because they'll have tons of tools. And what I usually find out is that they don't use the tool to its capacity. Maybe they're using the tool at 10% of what it can do. So we need to go, all right, you're spending money for this tool. What else can it do? And they're like, well, we bought it just for this one thing, but we haven't really had the time or energy to really understand what else it can do. And that's where I come back to the growth strategy for us is innovation, technology, and business strategy. Because when you combine those three together, and now you have that as the lens that you're looking through, it changes the way that you look at everything you're doing and the tools that you have available to you.
The fun fact is that you mentioned that the companies usually use like up to 10% of the capabilities of the product, and we meet it very often, and sometimes those companies are not even aware that there is so many different features within the platform that they use. Yeah, so they don't even have to invest, and as you mentioned, they already spend this money. Yeah, we just have to implement it and use it properly, wisely, and be aware of the capabilities. So considering all these things that we're discussing, like processes, strategies, and the tools at the end of the day, do you see, having some experience within EU, any differences between those two markets?
Yeah, I think for the biggest differences become around the regulatory environment. How you're able to, it's much easier to do things here in the United States.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, but to me, it's also sometimes a bad thing, because we tend to skip things. So there's a lot more regulation in the EU, even around customer data, which I think is important. And I even tell my U.S.-based businesses, because I had that experience outside the United States, that they should adopt more of the EU-based strategies, because you can actually use that as a competitive advantage. Yeah. In order to let people know that their data is being properly used, that they're protected. Another thing is market fragmentation. Again, you're talking about the United States, 50 countries, you're talking about all of you, let's just say America as a continent. So you got Canada and you got Mexico as well. The language becomes a huge difference. Everybody's speaking some form of English, but in Europe, in the European Union, the biggest thing is that market fragmentation based on language, so that's another huge difference where, as we start to think about expanding my organization outside of the country, I'm now starting to think about languages that I really didn't think about before, because I'm going, all right, how accessible do I want my content, our programming, our training, our services? I think access to capital is another big thing. It's definitely a lot more advanced here, at least I think it is in the U.S. Again, probably due to less regulations, and I guess the biggest thing is risk tolerance. We're big risk takers. We don't care. We jump off the plane without the parachute. We just have some needle and thread and some cloth, and we're like almost at the ground. We're like, all right, I'm almost done. Just one last. All right, we made it.
Yeah. I think it's your huge advantage, and also you mentioned that you can use those practices from EU, our legal practices to take care of data properly, and I think that it's really good for you, because you can use this as a good practices and you use it as a market differentiator, for your customers. But in EU we have no other choice. We have to align it to it. For instance, GDPR is quite obvious for many years already, but right now, since January, we have DORA, which is a regulation of digital resilience within EU, especially for financial sector, but also for the companies that provide services for financial sector. So of course we are affected because we have a lot of customers from a financial sector. We are in, let's say, 90% prepared for it, and we have no problem, because we already work with those companies for many years, and we have proper standards. But these 10% are doubts even that our government has, and that's the strange problem, because these regulations are not so clear, so still government struggle with it, and we are looking for the proper way to handle it, but
absolutely.
But if you could give some advice, because I really appreciate the way of working, that you are more brave and risk-taking in US, and I really like this approach from US. We are, old continent, and I feel it that people within EU are work more safer, let's say. But if you could recommend like 2-3 things comparing the markets, and that you could share as useful for the people, for the companies, small companies, to grow and to scale here in Europe, what would it be?
Yeah, I think investing in digital strategies, is huge, because it does give them the ability. I tell a lot of the local bit. I work with a lot of smaller businesses, 1 person up to 10 people organizations, and they definitely feel, they're like, oh, I'm a small business. I go, you're a small business with the world in your back pocket, and that is the online world. I go, you can build the right connections, the right bridges, you can be doing business all over the world if it makes sense. So I say, focus on your digital presence, focus on your brand. And again, I think this is going to be a huge conversation. I was never really a big brand person until probably the last 2 or 3 months, as I'm seeing how the brand can really, stand out, especially if it's no longer about the company pushing the message out, but the way that the tools like the AI search tools and all this are actually go in and find information about a strong brand and then present it to the customer. So I think investing heavily in digital strategies, because I think that's a huge plus for small businesses. They can't go run ads on television. They don't have the money to run ads on radio, and forget about print, altogether. Digital really changed the field. You can compete with companies that are 100 times your size if you got the right digital strategy, and focus on and embrace internationalism. Is there an opportunity for you to expand to the next country over? Is it the same language? Is it a different language? And this is about taking those small steps. And at the end of the day, everybody wants to move fast. They want money today. But you have to be realistic about this and go, look, let's develop a long-term plan. But now we can take smaller steps, because at least we know every step we take gets us closer to that big plan. And it's not a race anymore. It's a marathon, and not to neglect the customer, not to underestimate the power of your existing customer base. Talk to them. They're going to share so much great insight with you that literally they could write your story. They could write the story about you. And this is something we focused on even within my own organization this year. We started building massive case studies for different products, because again, we're the objective is these assets that we're creating have multiple implications, from bottom of the funnel strategies to conversation starters. I just got a call from one of the biggest SaaS companies that's about to hire me as a consultant. And they were asking for certain things, and it just so happens that I now have them. So I think the biggest, going back to a problem, is when they don't do they don't realize that some of these things they have to do, from building that digital strategy to upgrading their tech stack, will actually help them in other areas when they realize I didn't actually need that. And I've already done the work. I just have to either make tweaks to it so it fits this narrative, or I don't have to do anything. We actually have it. So I was able to send her, she was like, we're going to need some proof for this and that and some numbers and this. I go, here's 10 people that all say how great we are, in full-blown case studies with the problems they had, the outcomes that they got, and why they recommend this to everyone else. So it proved we live up to the hype, and she was like, oh, it would have taken me months if I hadn't done this already.
Jimmy, thank you for this final insights. But before because I feel that we could discuss for the hours about the strategies, technologies, if we dive into the details, because actually every area that we have discussed, we could dive in and discuss for additional 40 minutes. But before we wrap up our discussion, just let me ask you for a quick fire questions round.
Sure.
If you're ready. Okay, ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
It will be really quick. LinkedIn or YouTube?
LinkedIn.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Mountains or beach?
Mountains.
Inbound or outbound?
Inbound all day, every day.
Football or basketball?
Football.
American or European? I know you have soccer.
I'm starting to lead. American.
I heard that MLS is getting more and more popular.
It is.
Okay.
It is getting more and more popular. They're doing a good job.
And the most difficult question: sales or marketing?
Marketing.
Okay, interesting answers.
Can I say something about
Yeah,
that?
sure.
The reason why I say marketing, sales is extremely important.
Uh-huh.
If you can really dial in on your marketing, your sales will be so much better. So you can have great sales, but marketing will help amplify that. And a prime example, I literally just picked up a client, and my main job is to go in and present, because they actually saw me at DMWF. And they're a global company. I have to present to their sales team why marketing is so important. So obviously they've realized that there's a disconnect between the two.
Yeah.
And they need buy-in. So part of that conversation really was, all right, I'm going to hype them up about the really great power of marketing, how they can leverage marketing even as a salesperson. I go, but then your marketing department, I'm going to have a follow-up conversation with them, because they're going to have to deliver better. So I choose marketing because, again, I think marketing becomes that doorway where salespeople can't be everywhere. Marketing can.
Yeah, and you can use marketing as a leverage. Yeah, has no limits. Okay, so one last question: where our listeners can find more about you?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is my jam, but they can. Again, I'm a digital marketing head, so you put in Jimmy Newson, I own all of it. I have all the real estate for the probably the top 10 pages. So and the company is moving forward, small business. So put that in, you'll find me there as well. So I'm really easy to find, at least with the name.
Okay, super. Thank you very much for this time, and I hope to see you again.
Absolutely. I look forward, and I hope to see you when I'm back in Amsterdam.
Yeah, I hope we'll meet there. Thank you very much then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.